Hello, it's Monday, June 1st, and things are finally gradually changing. Some stores are opening with limits on how many can be in there at the same time. Some restaurants. I'm back in the office today, and the daycare opened today. So we're getting there. We just need to be patient and trust our governor and our government's judgment. So today I want to talk about a story that's in the daily lectionary, and it's when Paul travels around to the new Christian churches and to see how they're doing. And then he writes letters, which is now, Paul's letter to the Galatians, Paul's letter to the Corinthians, etc. And so the Galatians, he thinks, have really messed up. And he's not happy about it at all. And so he's not upset for like really blatant things like in Corinth. They were practicing incense and idolatry, false gods, when they were supposed to be opening a new Christian church. But in Galatia, they weren't that way. They weren't blatant like the Corinthians, but they still thought they needed to keep the law, the Jewish law, and they thought they had to be circumcised in order to be accepted by God. And there were opposers of the gospel, like there always will be, always have been, who really pushed against any of this new Christian belief. And so Paul says, hey, here's the story. You only, if you hear the gospel preached in any other way than you've already heard it, the one from Jesus Christ, even if you hear it from an angel from heaven, let that person be accursed. And then Paul feels so strongly about it that he goes, let me tell you this again. I repeat, if you hear any false gospel other than the one you heard, even an angel, let that person be accursed. So he feels pretty strongly about it. And he reminds them that, the gospel is not from humans, but it's directly from God. And then he reminds them of his past when he was Saul, before he became Paul. And he was violently opposed to the church and trying to destroy it. And so I guess that's another thing. Unfortunately, there seems to always be violence associated with people who oppose each other. But God called him through his grace. He called Paul, told him he won't be Saul anymore, he'll be Paul, and Paul totally turned around. And so, he's really upset with the Galatians. Come on, this isn't what we talked about. This isn't the way you're supposed to be. So get your act together. And, it's been a tough weekend. It's been a tough, the virus has made everything tough for a while, but not just that. It's been the violence, the protests, and against this terrible, terrible death and murder. And the protests have been all over the country. And the sad thing is that there has to be violence. You can oppose things in other ways that are more effective, less destructive. And I think, I know you know that, but it's it's sad, and I was struck by some posts on Facebook of policemen getting down on one knee and opposing things with the protesters, but they were joining them in the protests, but in a peaceful way. And it's just, the whole thing is just so heartbreaking, and we just need to stop the violence, and we need change, but we need to stop the violence. So this is God's peace and grace and mercy, and opposition to any of this hateful, evil stuff that's going on is something we need to hold on to always, but especially right now. So blessings.